This is a Hot Pie Original.
I've only got a certain amount of bandwidth and energy. And so I've got to really prioritize the things that are most important to me. And so that requires stepping away from the inbox and stepping away from the projects and having some time to take a long walk and think. And that's not something that is a regular part of my routine, or at least has been, that I'm trying to incorporate more so that I can make sure that, again, on these short days that we have on Earth, that they're lived in such a way that is in line with my priorities and values. Because it's easy to get lost in the long email inbox and let a whole day go by without doing anything that actually matters.
Dr. Michael Hull is a street doctor, professor, and the founder and executive director at the Impact Factory at the University of Texas. On this episode, we discuss using the principles of human-centered design to tackle problems facing the vulnerable and underserved. If you have an idea that you think can have massive social impact, this is definitely the episode for you. If you're looking for more information and resources to improve your health, well-being, and performance, then sign up for my free high-performance newsletter, Adaptation. Just go to www.erikcorum.com and sign up now. This is my effort to bring zero-cost, high-performance resources and tools to anyone with a desire to improve. But now, it's time to lean in and learn from the best. Well, Michael, it's great to have you on the show today.
I'm happy to be here, Erik. Thanks for having me.
This is going to be a lot of fun. I mean, when we met in 2019, I wouldn't have thought that we'd be here doing this today, but it's the beauty of relationships, huh?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, look at you now.
Yeah.
Your own show.
Well, let's start talking about your small town upbringing in Indiana and kind of how that shaped the way that you see the world.
Sure. I grew up in a very small rural farm town in Indiana. Wikipedia tells me we have 800 people or so. Pretty sure I'm related to a good number of them there. My dad is a retired police officer for the Indiana State Police. Worked there for about 27 years. Started out as a trooper and then moved into the Special Investigations Division, where he developed this expertise as an undercover detective. And in particular, he was in many ways an actor. So he was a part of Ku Klux Klan rallies undercover, trying to take them down. He would run sting operations to buy stolen vehicles. And in particular, his specialty, if you will, is that he would meet with people who would want to kill somebody else. And he would be the hitman undercover, get them to supply a gun, get them to supply a check. He'd be mic'd up and they'd, basically tell him what they wanted done, and then they'd come in and bust him.
Wow.
So from a young age, this idea that service to community with a sense of courage and bravery, that became very important to me where I grew up. My mom, on the other hand, is a volunteer caretaker for the elderly and dying in our hometown. And so I can remember on many occasions going with her to the homes of these folks and watching her comb their hair, hum them songs, give them massages. I mean, she was just she wore our Christian faith on her sleeve and set that example for me as something that was meaningful and important. And I really admire her for that. So both of them on their shoulders, I mean, they're heroes to me in a certain extent, set the stage for how it is that I wanted to live my life. This idea that service to others, service to community, bringing a sense of compassion, bringing a sense of courage to think outside the box and try different things was important.
Wow. So because you really have a unique job right now. Really, you have 3 jobs. You're a street doctor, you're a professor, and then you run an entrepreneurship hub, essentially, for social initiatives. And we're going to talk about that. But like, you're like one of the most interesting men in the world.
Come on.
You belong on a beer bottle somewhere or a beer commercial.
This sad beer.
So I know you went to Butler University and
That's
you
right.
like some things started changing when you got involved in social work. You want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah, I was really lucky to work with a social services agency as a case manager during a lot of my time at Butler. It shaped a lot of my thinking, to be frank. It humbled me in a lot of ways too. Because of my parents, I knew that there were people who were struggling, that were vulnerable around us, but this gave me a chance to be on a regular basis up close and personal with them. Very privileged window into their struggles, and also the policies and programs that we have in our communities that are trying to mitigate those problems and whether or not they were working very well. To tell you a brief story, I remember a client of mine who was this woman who had a lot of struggles. She was facing problems getting enough food, housing, electricity, what have you. And she was a part of this women's savings group. So her and other women who were facing similar struggles would get together on a regular basis and put money together. And then on every 6 weeks, a couple months, they would decide who among that group would get to use those monies on whatever their greatest need might be. And so when my client's time came, she spent the money to rent out a storage unit. And at the time, I was in college. I was a little frustrated with her because she had a lot other needs that I thought were more urgent. I thought she needed to fix her broken down car, for example, so she could get back and forth to work more often. That would supply her a regular income. But it turns out that she bought that storage unit because she was living with a man who was forcing her to have sex with him for a cheaper rent. And so this gave her a chance to get out of that situation. And then being the entrepreneurial woman that she was, she rented out space in that storage unit to other women that were in need of storing their things. And she used that money that she saved up over time to be able to rent a place that she could afford that was more safe. And so it was this humbling experience for me very early on to realize that if you want to solve a problem, you got to get next to the people who are actually facing it. And that there's a lot of power in listening to others as an entrepreneur or as someone who wants to make the world better, if you want to come up with things that actually matter to people.
That must have been really humbling.
To say the least. Did
you confront her and say, hey, I think you should be using this money a different way? And then she told you why?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And also just, how much of a gap there was during our relationship until that point that I didn't know that piece about her history.
Wow. So why did you decide to go into medicine as your, method or route to be able to create social change initially?
It's fairly uninspiring, to tell you the truth, Eric. Neither of my parents went to college, and I didn't know very many people in my hometown who were doctors or in the medical field. I was getting good grades. I liked science. I wanted to help people. I thought that might make sense. I will say there's been several experiences since then along the path that have kind of illustrated to me that this was the right choice. But I was lucky in the sense that I stumbled into it and have found a way that's gave me a lot of meaning.
You didn't just end up going to medical school. You went to Stanford, which is, there's a couple places, I'll be honest, in the country, and you went to the other one now that I think about it, but I love academia. And every time I got a chance to go to Harvard, you walk on that campus and you're like, I just feel different, right? Whatever. You go to Stanford, you kind of feel the same way. You had an opportunity to go there. But something changed when you were at Stanford. There was a issue down in Haiti. You want to talk about that?
Sure. When I was coming off my second year of medical school, the earthquake in Port-au-Prince happened in 2010. I'd been working a little bit in the global health space before then, so I'd actually been down to Haiti before. And the timing was so that I was able to take a leave from medical school and to spend some time down there. And I don't think this will be any surprise to you or anybody else out there listening. It was a heartbreaking experience to see a place that had already been struggling so much and then had this happen.
Who'd you go down there with?
I went down there with a few nonprofits from actually Indiana at the time, a gentleman that was running one from my hometown in particular. And then we were in coordination with folks from all across the country. I mean, at the time of the earthquake, there was an influx of help to the place, which was interesting to see on multiple levels, both how effective it could be and how ineffective it could be if it wasn't coordinated in particular. But that was most of my experience, given the stage of my training at that time, was not in a medical sense. I didn't have those skills yet. And so a lot of what I was doing was trying to figure out how to coordinate some of the teams, what our budget might be. We'd initially set out, we were going to build a clinic down there. And so a lot of the skills that I was learning at the time had a lot more to do with what one might learn in business school than what I was learning in medical school. And it was actually the impetus for me thinking, I actually need some of these other skills if I want to be able to build stuff that's going to be able to be sustainable and have an impact in the way I want to have.
So you went back to Stanford and you decided to get an MBA at the same time.
Yeah, it's a joint degree program. So
they already had this program there.
A few people had done it before. You basically do medical school in 3.5 instead of 4 years. And then you do business school in 1.5 instead of 2 years. On
the back end of medical school?
You do a few years, 3 years of med school. Then you go for a full year at the business school. And then your last year is kind of a hybrid model between the two.
Wow. What was what did you walk away from business school with? Because I know Stanford's MBA program is renowned, especially for the design thinking portion of it. And we've had a lot of fellow colleagues that went through it. Yeah. I don't know if it was all in the same time, if you knew Jesse or any of those folks, but what did you walk away from going, okay, aha moments or classes that you took or people you ran into?
Well, not surprisingly, the people that you meet are probably the most valuable part of the experience at Stanford's business school. People from all walks of life, which is a bit different than medical school if you think about it, because in medical school, a lot of folks are coming from a basic science background or public health background, or like me, kind of pre-health and went that route. Business school has got much more diversity. So you've got folks who are in the medical field, but then you've got educators, folks from the military, people from Wall Street, all in the same room. And so it enabled this really robust discussion, which opened my eyes to different ways of thinking about some of these big, hairy social problems that I'd been passionate about for some time. With regards to human-centered design, that was the first exposure that I had to it. And that has become a real cornerstone of a lot of the work that I have done since. Stanford has a design school. I took a few courses there. And a lot of it is around actually hearkening back to that first story I told you, getting really close to the people that are facing the problems you actually want to solve and bringing them alongside with you as you design these new solutions. And there's a real science behind that I didn't appreciate that's become important.
Can you give us a couple, maybe key points or things that people can do? I don't know if they're building something or they have this idea. How would you test that? What would the simple thing that somebody could do to see if does this thing really going to work? And is the way I'm going about it actually going to help somebody?
Well, one of the key principles of human-centered design in general is what we call rapid cycle prototyping and iteration. So the idea is that if you spend months coming up with an idea, building it, tweaking it, and you're still in your ivory tower and you haven't gone out to the community, the likelihood of that being something that people really want and need is pretty low. Compared to if you build something really quickly, a minimal viable product, MVP is what we call it, and you put it in the hands of your potential user, your potential client, customer, watch them interact with it, see how they use it, see how they use it incorrectly, ask them questions. You can get that feedback, go back to the drawing table, build something else quickly, take it back to them, and you repeat that process. And so in the same amount of time that you might have sat in your ivory tower for 6 months, you could have had multiple iterations of your product or service alongside these folks, and then end up on the other end with something much more valuable, much more close to what it is that they actually want or need.
Wow. Now you've taken that and run with it and what you're doing right now. You want to talk about, you went on to Harvard, was it pediatrics, right?
That's right.
Yeah. But now you're here in Austin, Texas.
Hook 'em.
I'm an Aggie, gig 'em, but I love my Longhorn friends.
All right, I'm out of here.
No, I love my Longhorn friends. But you've got a really interesting role at the university. Let's talk about that and what you're doing and how you're engaging the community. And I'm really excited to talk about some of these startups that have come out of this.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm very fortunate. I have an awesome role with a lot of diversity. So as you mentioned, one day a week, I'm a physician for children experiencing poverty, often without health insurance, often experiencing homelessness. So that's my very privileged window, again, into the struggles that our local communities are facing and also the gaps that an entrepreneur could plug along the way.
And you're going around in a vehicle, right?
Yeah, it's a mobile unit.
Mm-hmm.
It travels to homeless shelters, food pantries, and others, places looking for the hard to reach, high risk children and families in the community.
What's it called?
Children's Health Express.
Okay.
It's based out of Dell Children's Medical Center,
okay,
which is our local children's hospital. Another day a week I spend teaching on campus. So on the main campus, I teach undergraduates and graduates classes on human-centered design, classes on U.S. health and social policy, civic engagement, and mostly around the world of social entrepreneurship, which leads into my third role. I lead what's called the Impact Factory, which is our university's engine for social innovation and entrepreneurship. So we have different pillars of work. One is a prototyping pillar where we have students or faculty who have a great idea for how to make the world better, and we help them get that to launch by providing them necessary resources or pieces of knowledge that they might need. We have an acceleration portfolio, which is to say, as we identify programs wherever they might be in Texas or across the United States that are promising or evidence-based, we help them connect with the right resources, human capital, community partners on the ground, potential funding to come and do their good work right here in the Lone Star State.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a teaching portfolio, which is, as it sounds, lots of experiential learning programs, workshops. And we have a capacity building portfolio, which is as we identify evidence-based practices of our own or uncover certain data that we think should be shared, we work on getting that in the hands of not just academics, but in the hands of policymakers and others in positions of influence who could help us scale up that good work in a faster way.
Wow. Now you've had some pretty cool things come out of your experience. So one of them is called street cred. You want to talk about the story behind that?
Yeah, sure. So Street Cred actually started back in Boston with my co-founder, Dr. Lucy Marcel. The backdrop to it is that I'd done this internship at the Department of Federal Affairs for the American Academy of Pediatrics, which is our overarching governing body of pediatricians. And the president of that at the time tasked me with looking into the various anti-poverty federal programs that the government offered and which ones had the biggest bang for the buck on child poverty rates. And it turns out, both in rural and urban settings, the tax credits are leading the way. And I didn't know anything about tax credits, and understanding the connection between poverty and health. Poverty makes you sick. That tax credits were having an impact on poverty. Well, gosh, if somebody like me who's taken an oath to improve people's health, why don't I know about these things? So I started asking my patients when I came back from the internship, do you get your taxes done? How much do you pay to get them done? Do you get monies back? What do you spend the monies on? And it hit me that, gosh, we ask about all these sensitive topics when people come in to see us. We ask about sex and alcohol and drugs. Why aren't we asking about money if it has an impact on people's health? And so a couple months into that journey, this mother of two, a toddler and a newborn, came into my office. And I was asking her these questions. And she said, that's great. I had no idea that these monies could have that kind of impact on my health or my child's health. Could you help me find a place in Boston at the time that would do my taxes for free? So I said, sure. So we sat there in the office. We got on Google. We searched it. We found a place. Fast forward a couple of weeks, she comes back with her newborn and toddler and tells me how she'd taken 2 buses and a train across Boston to get to this free tax prep center, only to find that it was closed because they didn't have the budget to update their website and they didn't update the hours, and she couldn't get in. That
had to be frustrating.
Super frustrating for her, I'm sure. But being the tenacious mom that she was, she went back on that same 2 buses and a train the next week, only to find that she didn't have the right paperwork. And so she came back to me and she said, hey, I waited on you for 30 minutes today in your waiting room. I went to H&R Block and paid $400 to get my taxes done. Wouldn't it be nice that since I'm here wasting time anyway, we could just do my taxes while I'm here?
Great idea.
Great idea. So she deserves the credit. So Street Cred is this organization, now national nonprofit, that helps people file taxes, claim tax refunds, build budgets, credit, wealth, while they wait on guys like me running behind in clinic.
That is awesome story. I just think it's so incredible that you're building these things alongside the person that's experiencing the problem. And that sounds so like, oh, well, everybody should do that. But it just doesn't happen that way. And I know personally, like the first time I ever tried to build a product, I did exactly the wrong thing. I'm like, oh, I got this great idea. I'm going to build this thing. And then you put it out there and nobody likes it. Yeah. And then there's like, it takes you 100 different iterations till it finally works. I just think it's amazing your mindset of how you're doing this. And especially with something like poverty, like there's a separation. You know what I'm saying? And we talk about this a lot and on the news right now, the class separation, social economic separation. But unless like you experience the problem with the person, like there's no way you can really understand how to help them. You have other initiatives like Good Apple, Main Street Relief. It seems like if I go on your LinkedIn profile, you got tons of things you're doing. You want to talk about those other two real quick?
Yeah, I'd love to. So Good Apple is a grocery delivery service on a mission to end food insecurity. We launched back in November of 2019. And for every box of fresh, locally sourced organic produce that we deliver to a customer, we deliver another box of those same fresh foods, as well as some other pantry staples like grain, dairy products to the doorstep of some family that's been identified as facing food insecurity. And food insecurity, just to clear the air, is basically when a family has to make a decision between buying food or some other sort of basic necessity. So if I write a prescription for a medicine and they got to go fill that prescription and it costs a certain amount of money, families facing food insecurity are faced with a decision: do I fill the prescription or do I buy food? So we launched that program in 2019. And by the way, this was alongside some student entrepreneurs at the University of Texas at Austin. They deserve the credit. They were down in the weeds getting this done. I was the old guy trying to advise them along the way. Had some success early, and then the pandemic hit. And what we realized is that at the time we had this great infrastructure for food delivery. And there were a whole host of people, not just families with children, who was our initial clientele. There were older adults, people with weak immune systems, people with chronic disease who were stuck at home because of the stay-at-home ordinances and because it was dangerous to get on public transportation or go in the grocery store where they might be exposed to the coronavirus. And so we leveraged our existing infrastructure along with partnerships from across industry and philanthropy to start what we called Stay Home, Stay Healthy, which was essentially similar delivery service of goods to the doorsteps of people in need. And I think to date, we've delivered a little over 850,000 pounds of food to a little, somewhere around 30,000 people in the Central Texas area.
How many people are working on this project?
Lots. We've got a core team of entrepreneurs in the Good Apple, in the Good Apple cohort, but we've got partnerships with, for example, the city of Austin, private transportation companies, nonprofits in town who've helped us identify the people most in need, health clinics who've similarly helped us identify the most in need, philanthropists, folks from the private and public sector. So it's an army of folks, if you will. And I think it illustrates this power of crises, especially to bring people together from across disciplines to develop these solutions that have a chance to make people's lives better. There is power at the intersection of disciplines, and Good Apple really brings that home to me as something that I need to continue to do.
Wow. Is it self-sustainable, or is it an organization where they're actively seeking funds? Or
so Good Apple, its original business model is self-sustaining. So it's, we use the profit margins from our customer base to subsidize the cost of the impact side of our business, which is important. I think, I've certainly been a part of nonprofits who have struggled every day to figure out where do we have that next check coming from a generous philanthropist. And in times of, a global pandemic, for example, some of those funds get shifted to very needed organizations. And that means that other organizations are struggling during these times, just like some of the small businesses around.
So is that your model or one of the things you try to encourage is like try to create a self-sustainable model, maybe use profits to drive these other initiatives?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we have other models. Another program in our portfolio is called Early Bird. It's a health system integrated scholarship program for low-income families. So as parents achieve certain healthy milestones, like coming to doctor's appointments or dentist appointments or signing up their kiddo for pre-kindergarten, then we put scholarship dollars in the college savings accounts of their babies in hopes of incentivizing short-term behavior that's healthy with these long-term impact on education. And we've tried to align the things that we're incentivizing with the priorities of health insurance payers, for example, in hopes that if we can move the needle on the outcomes, then potentially the health insurance payer down the line might pick up the tab because it helps their bottom line. So there's different ways of thinking about how to make things self-sustaining and revenue generating. But yes, I think it's important that that's at the core of whatever we're trying to do.
I just keep coming back to this in my head. You are doing a lot of things, very important things, social initiatives. You're a teacher, you're a doctor.
I'm a dad and a husband. Those are the most important.
Yeah. I mean, you're doing a lot of stuff. How do you keep it all straight and moving forward?
I don't, Erik. I mean, that's the honest truth. I'm struggling to keep up some days. I'm lucky to have a community of people around me all the time that care about these issues. And I mean, that's the bottom line thing on any of this work is that not everybody has a chance to come on Dr. Erik's podcast, right? There's a whole host of people who get up every day and work their hearts out to help people in need without any recognition like this. And so it's a team effort. I've tried to surround myself with people that I trust and admire. I've tried to surround myself with a personal board of advisors, if you will, people who can help keep me accountable to my values, and who can say, "Hey, you're approaching burnout here. You're approaching, spreading yourself too thin. Let's think about prioritizing." It's not a board meeting per se. It's a group of people that I don't even know if they know they're on my personal board of advisors that I talk to on a regular basis, weekly to every 6 months, depending on the individual. Just as a means of keeping me true to who I am. And they fulfill different roles. Some of them are cheerleaders who are, hype me up and make me feel good about the work. Some of them are straight shooters who would say, you're not doing this right. Let's figure out a different way to go about it. And then, take the humility hit and move forward. So, I think the bottom line is I'm not always keeping it straight. And I think that's something important for people to hear.
Yeah.
And it's a team effort, and you got to be thoughtful about surrounding yourself with people that can help. If
you're married to the right person, that person will let you know as well.
It's for
happened
sure.
to me quite a few times.
Yeah, we share that.
Yeah. I mean, you have such a great heart and you're a very likable guy. You have to be pretty driven. I mean, you have to be. I mean, I am. I mean, how do you balance that? You know what I'm saying? I want to work hard. I want to be the best I can be, but then I also want to be like engaged with my family and have sustainable relationships.
Yeah. I'll say a couple things. My daughter just turned 1, and that's changed my perspective on what to be driven about. It is of utmost importance to me that when she looks back on her life, she knows that I was there and involved and engaged. And so that takes shifting of priorities and energy and learning how to say no more often than I used to opportunities that might advance one of these programs that we've been talking about. The other thing I'll say is that I think anybody who had the privilege to be where I am on a weekly basis alongside the families that I get to see and take care of would be similarly driven to do something about it. It is, and maybe this is one of the secret sauces of what keeps me going, at least, is this balance between having an opportunity to be up close and personal in a one-on-one way in service to someone else, to really try to incorporate their pain in some piece of my soul to keep me to move forward, while also having the opportunity to be at this 30,000 foot view level, trying to coordinate how do we change a system or how do we build an organization that could address the problem that individual is facing. I know you well enough to know that if an individual facing homelessness or poverty or hunger was sitting across from you, you'd want to make their life better. And I think in my experience, the vast majority of people that I've met my whole life would do the same. And so there's nothing magic about that other than it takes effort to purposefully be out in the community and not sitting in our comfortable ivory towers, if you will, every day.
I just had a thought pop up, and I think about people that created amazing social change, like LBJ, right? He was a teacher to start in rural America, right? It's almost as if, and he got into politics. He never kind of lost touch with that of who he was. He would come back to his ranch, right?
Yeah.
Quite frequently. And that kind of puts you back in touch with who you are, what it's all about. I think about the world of politics and people that are in positions to create change. And I don't know if we have a commentary on this or not, but it's like, you are helping create these organizations, but then you're also down in the grassroots. It seems to me as like that would be very helpful for some of the people that are making policy.
I think for everybody.
Yeah.
Main Street Relief is another one of the organizations in our portfolio. That came out of this experience with my parents, who run a small business now in rural Indiana, who, when the pandemic struck and the economic recession followed, were needing some help to apply for some of these federal loans. And when I was helping them, it was difficult. Things were confusing. I didn't understand a lot of the process. And that made me think, gosh, there's probably a lot of other mom and pop shops around the country who might need some similar help. And then alongside that, I was having folks like you from my Presidential Leadership Scholars Day or classmates from business school who were saying, I've got some skills and I want to help, but I'm not sure where to plug in. So Main Street Relief matches those two parties of people. And I tell you that because yes, we've had some great success helping the small businesses stay afloat during this time. But the other wonderful gift that Main Street Relief has given me is this great sense of hope that when we connect people from different walks of life who look different, pray different, think different, there is possibility and maybe even probability that some of these prejudices will fall away and then we can actually get something done. We had not too long ago this banker in rural Texas, very conservative gentleman, get matched with this graphic designer in downtown LA.
Love it.
Very progressive young lady. And they are self-described best buddies now. And they've had a chance to talk about the George Floyd trial and other types of issues in our society today that have caused division. And it paints this picture that if we come out from behind whoever we portray ourselves on social media to be, and we listen to folks, get to know one another, that there's a chance that there can be some unity in this country we love, and that gives me a lot of hope.
I'm with you. Like in locker rooms, where I've spent most of my life, you'd see a smattering of America. Some different. I remember like University of Kentucky, we had people from Kentucky, Ohio, Florida, all different walks of life. Doesn't matter what school we were at. And it's just like everybody comes together for a common cause, but you're sitting next to somebody every single day who may be totally different than you, but you learn to become more relational and to engage the person first before you can get to the solution. So I think that is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. See it in the military. Saw it on the small scale. Saw it at my wedding. People from my hometown who think about politics in one way coming together with people that I met along the way in California and Massachusetts who were there for the common cause of celebrating love and had a great time. It's possible for us to have those kinds of relationships with people that we might otherwise write off if we saw whatever the news media was putting out about that population.
No question. I've got hope. I've got a lot of hope. I know the Presidential Scholars Program changed me in a lot of ways. There are some folks in there that I got to know and become really close with that I just wouldn't like. If you go to your default mode, it's wherever you grew up and what was ever comfortable for you. And it's, we are a tapestry of different people. And I think that's the beauty of it. And we gotta, I love how when you go out and serve, that's really like where that connection happens. And so I would just challenge folks, I don't know, that are listening to this to go serve in a way that makes you uncomfortable. Don't, at church, like, it's like, oh, go help serve. Well, I love meeting people, so I'm going to go greet somebody, or I'm going to go help this in my community. Well, go do something that really makes you uncomfortable. And then I think it'll create a new type of connection and a new type of bond. I love the way that you think, and I love the way that you're solving problems. How do you help young people see things differently? Like, how are you helping them shift their mental model? Because you're in the classroom with them right now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any, like, some ideas of how you can help this next generation do that? Are there things that you're doing right now to do that?
Well, I'll say, first of all, it is so inspiring and fun and humbling to be in the classroom with tomorrow's leaders. I mean, at the University of Texas at Austin, in every course that I teach, it's full of people who are going to go out and change the world. I mean, that's the motto of UT. What starts here changes the world. It's going to happen. And so I'm confident that with or without me, good things are to come. I think the thing that I say a lot to students is that you don't have to wait to have those letters behind your name. Take this or that course to make the world better. And that's been proven over and over in some of the projects that we talked about today, where students, because they've been out in the community next to people who need their help, humbled themselves enough to listen to what people actually need, leverage the resources that they have because of their relative privilege as being a Longhorn, have had positive impact on the lives of people who need it. So I say a lot, start now. The problems are too big, too urgent. Folks are struggling too much, and you gotta go because no need to wait.
I love it. So this podcast is about high performance. All right. What does that word mean, or that term high performance mean to you?
I think it's changed over time. For me now, and this harkens back to our time in the Presidential Leadership Scholars Program, high performance means making decisions, leading people, and doing so in a way that's aligned with my core values. As you know, part of that program was trying to get us to narrow them down to the core ones that will drive our decisions, will be the foundation of our decisions, that provide the lens through which to look when we have a hard decision in front of us. And so I'm not perfect at this by any means, or even close to it, but that's become the definition for me. We're in a really privileged position, you and I, Erik, to have opportunities to do things for the world that we have options. And so I want to make sure that in the days that I have left, however long those might be, that I'm making decisions that are aligned with the things that are most important to me. And that comes from faith, that comes from experiences I've had on the ground, that comes with friendships, comes from friendships like the ones that we share. And I think that's the most important for at least performing in a way that at the end of the day feels meaningful and purposeful.
I love it. So what do you do? Like, do you have any habits or routines to take care of yourself so that you can keep doing that?
I don't have any rocket science answers here. I think having a little girl and seeing the world through her eyes has been really helpful in refreshing my screen, if you will, and motivating me to keep going. As a physician, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that even though I don't do it as often as I should, that exercising is important, that eating healthier is important. Deep friendships where I can be vulnerable with folks, sharing the struggles that I'm facing. I lost a little cousin who I considered a little brother on Thanksgiving Day this last year. I've had some valleys along the way as a result. And because I had close friends that I trusted, who I knew no matter how I showed up were going to love and care and respect for me, and show respect for me, I was able to share the feelings that I was having, and that meant a lot for my mental health, which I think people need to talk about more. High performance, if you will, requires not only an able body but an able mind, and we got to take care of our minds just like we would our bodies. And so, having a support network that you can lean on in times of need, and that you can celebrate with in times of triumph, I think it goes a long way to sustainability, at least for me.
I love it. What are you learning about right now? Or are there books you're reading, or do you listen to what is it you're leading into right now to get better? Because I know that you have a great mind, and people that are on the forefront are always trying to learn or get better. Is there a skill you're trying to improve? Is there a book you're reading right now?
I'm reading President Obama's memoir at the moment. I think similar to the Presidential Leadership Scholars Program in a way, it has shed light on the idea that these are human people who've been in these leadership positions and who made mistakes, who had to humble themselves along the way, who had to take care of themselves along the way. And that has helped me to dream bigger, if you will, that if I want to make the change in the world that I hope to see, that there's no reason to cut it short. Let's go for the stars. Ways of improvement. I've got a lot of ways to improve. I think I've been trying to. This is a good example of something that I don't do very often. Come on a podcast and talk about some of these things. I think it's a skill to build up, and I'm honored that I'm here to have a chance to do so with you. So thanks.
Yeah.
I'm trying to prioritize more. I think that's the biggest thing. Having a daughter and a wife who I adore, amid some of the busyness that the pandemic has given, with some of the projects that we talked about, on top of some of these personal deep struggles with the loss of a loved one, has caused me to realize I've only got a certain amount of bandwidth and energy. And so I've got to really prioritize the things that are most important to me. And so that requires stepping away from the inbox and stepping away from the projects and having some time to take a long walk and think. And that's not something that is a regular part of my routine, or at least has been, that I'm trying to incorporate more so that I can make sure that, again, on these short days that we have on earth, that they're lived in such a way that is in line with my priorities and values. Because it's easy to get lost in the long email inbox and let a whole day go by without doing anything that actually matters.
That's something that this past year I've really leaned into personally. And I people have day planners.
Yeah.
I've always been like, I tried it, didn't work. Finally found something that worked for me. And just like having the discipline to plan out my quarter, like what it is I want to get done. And then like at the beginning of the week, evaluating what are the big 3 things I have to do. And then creating a plan during the week, and then being disciplined at the end of the week to evaluate myself. And it really gives me a lot of sense of just fulfillment to be able to go, okay, I did the big 3. These other things didn't happen, but that's okay. I don't know, for me, because I want to get everything done and I want to do it. That was like a big game changer for me this year. So maybe we talk offline about that, but that was really, really helpful for me. So the people that are listening to this that are like, wow, I really want to help. Where can people find you? How can they help these initiatives?
I think the easiest way is probably to go to theimpactfactory.org.
Okay.
Go to our contact page, send me a note. It'll get to me eventually. And I'd be happy to interact with, learn from, collaborate with anybody who's excited about tackling some of these big, hairy social problems that we know are making people less healthy and harming their prosperity.
Awesome. Michael, I'm privileged to call you a friend, and I'm just so thankful you came on today. I appreciate it.
Likewise, Erik. Thank you very much.
If today's podcast enriched your life in any way, please support the BluePrint by doing one of the following. If you're listening on an audio platform like Apple or Spotify, please subscribe. If you're listening on Apple, would you please leave us a 5-star review and give us some feedback? Your feedback is tremendously valuable. Finally, if you watch us on YouTube, subscribe and leave us some feedback. We'd love to know how to improve the show and which topics you're loving. But until next time, this is Erik Horn. Thank you for tuning in.
Thanks for listening. You can find more episodes and all other Hot Pie Media originals baked fresh daily at our home on the web at hotpiemedia.com, the Hot Pie Media YouTube channel, or wherever you listen to podcasts.